Well, you guys, I think it's safe to say at this point that for this week at least, the Minnesota Vikings are rightfully so the talk of the NFL world. And I say this, of course, following the Vikings' thrilling and already crowned Game of the Year victory over the Buffalo Bills, which has now pushed this team to a surging 8-1 overall record on the season, and also has resulted in many people around the league finally giving this Vikings team the credit that they have been searching for almost the entire year. And sure, while this game definitely did open the eyes of many to what the Vikings have been doing all year and what they might be capable of down the road, there are still some specific things about this Vikings team that even after their statement victory, that honestly, either some people still aren't realizing it, or they just don't want to admit it, so let's get into it. Also though guys, if you haven't yet, don't forget to drop a like on the video if you enjoy, subscribe, and turn on those notifications to never miss another NFL video, because as we've done all season long, we're just going to continue to be coming out with brand new NFL content every single week around here, so just trust me, you do not want to miss out. But anyway, to get back on topic with the Minnesota Vikings, for most of the 2022 season thus far, no matter what you personally thought about this Vikings team and the record that they showcased, most people, and even some Minnesota Vikings fans included, I'm sure, were skeptical of what this team was actually doing, or even lack thereof. Because, well, with some of the facts included being that they only beat one winning team through their first 8 games of the season, which may I remind you was a Dolphins team without Tua Tagovailoa. 6 of their 7 victories on the season were by a 1-score margin, and even the fact that 2 of those victories were double-digit comebacks against the Detroit Lions and the Washington Commanders. While I personally am always for the argument of saying a win is a win no matter how you do it, I can definitely also see the case why some people might have not wanted to mark down Minnesota as a true contender just yet. And even though I know some people here in the comments are still probably not going to give the Vikings the credit that they deserve, even after marching into the current Super Bowl favorites' home stadium and upsetting them in the fashion that they did, most people, it seems at least, gave them their flowers. But it still seems like people are disregarding some of the biggest reasons as to why the Vikings are actually where they're at right now. And I mean, first things first, you can't talk about the Vikings without immediately jumping into their borderline top 5 passing attacks so far this season, which of course is due in a very, very large part to the generational talent of Justin Jefferson. And if it wasn't for Tyreek Hill's historic season, Jay Jettas would be leading the league in receiving with ease in his second year. And even when you shift the conversation from the air attack into the ground game, while statistically it might not look the prettiest at first glance, I think it's safe to say they have continually established themselves more and more as the weeks have gone on, with their proven backfield in guys like Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison. And then in terms of the defense, while the numbers might tell one story, the production and massive plays they've made would tell another. But regardless, when considering every aspect of this Minnesota Vikings team, would you believe me if I told you that they haven't even come close to hitting their ceiling yet? Well, to be honest, I don't think they have, and here's why. So to start this conversation and kind of get back on topic with their air attack, let's talk about the guy at the helm of this operation in Kirk Cousins. Because even with leading this team to the impressive record that they have right now, Kirk Cousins hasn't really been lighting up the stat sheet or putting up eye-popping numbers by any means, but nonetheless, it still feels like a version of Kirk Cousins that we haven't yet seen in his tenure with Minnesota. And when I say this, I think the reasoning heavily leans into the recent coaching change by Minnesota as well, with hiring Kevin O'Connell. And honestly, it doesn't matter what NFL team you're talking about, because when you implement a coaching change like this, while sure in the long run it is anticipated to bring more success to the team, at the beginning of any new partnership, especially in your first season, you are likely to see some hiccups. But for Kirk Cousins and the Vikings, while sure there's been some moments here and there hasn't been many to refer to. And in fact, again, for this Minnesota Vikings team that has been so heavily predicated on the run game to be the major area of their success over the last couple of years, to not only be a pass-first offense, but to be one of the best in the entire league is a major testimony to how quickly Kirk Cousins has developed in this new offense. And to be honest, I and be surprised if he doesn't only continue to improve as the weeks go on and as we approach the playoffs. But of course, when you're talking about the passing game, you can't also forget about the receivers, which of course includes Justin Jefferson, who at this point is confirmed to be that guy, or should I say him. But even with all of the remarkable things that we've seen already through the first year and a half of Jay Jetta's career and how much versatility he has added to the operation of this offense, a lot of people just seem to not pay attention to how Minnesota is getting it done elsewhere. Like for example, with guys like veteran Adam Thielen, who has done a tremendous job at stretching the field, their wide receiver 3 in KJ Osborn, who really is just going unnoticed with his improvement, and even their newly acquired tight end in TJ Hockenson, who just through 2 games this year, the Vikings have made it very clear how monumental of a portion he is going to have in this offense. But when you get into the actual numbers of these guys, more necessarily talking about Thielen and Osborn, while it doesn't seem like they have as big of an impact as I'm trying to explain, they are definitely 2 viable threats under Jay Jetta's that have been doing their part so far. And honestly, even the scoring distribution can testify to this, because it's about as evenly balanced as you can get with a guy like Justin Jefferson, and if they're able to keep this up through the air, it will definitely cause issues for any opposing teams. And then to get back to the ground game, while I know it might seem like this part of the offense is less essential to the team's success than we've seen in years past, many people just don't look past the numbers and realize that this might be the best that Dalvin Cook has been utilized thus far in his Vikings career. Because in terms of his actual numbers, his yards per game, etc., some might look at this and say, okay, Dalvin Cook's having an off year. But in fact, with them not needing Cook to carry as big of a portion as usual, he's actually averaging the highest yards per attempt that we've ever seen from him. And with him operating behind what might be the best offensive line he's had so far, and the Vikings finally being able to say they can catch teams off guard with a run, even though it might not seem like it, Dalvin Cook and even the Vikings run game in general are thriving more than they have in quite some time. And also to have a true 2-way balanced attack on your offense that the Vikings have been showing us is 9 times out of 10 a crucial requirement that most contenders would like to have. But then on the other side of the ball, while some numbers you might see indicate that this defense might have some work to do, and others might tell you that they're one of the best units in the league, with this side of their team seeming to be stacked with some guys like Daniel Hunter, Eric Kendrick, Sedarius Smith, Patrick Peterson, and even Harrison Smith, just to name a few, I don't think anything describes this Vikings defense better from what we've seen so far into the season at least, that 9 times out of 10, they will show up and make the big play when they need it. And I mean, if you don't believe that, a fair amount of their games already this year have been decided and clinched on defensive plays. But yeah, regardless of what might be seen about this Minnesota Vikings defense, there is no doubt in my mind that they will continue to do their due diligence as their year goes on. But of course, similar to everything we've mentioned so far in this video, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Regardless though, you guys, with everything that we've mentioned so far regarding the Minnesota Vikings, I'm also extremely curious to hear what you all have to think about their situation. So please let me know in the comments, out of everything we've seen from Minnesota so far, what has been the most surprising part to you about their success? And also, depending on how this season ends, do you think the Vikings should strongly consider re-signing Kirk Cousins for the foreseeable future? But again, you guys, if you haven't yet, don't forget to go down below and leave a like on the video if you did enjoy, and of course, subscribe while you're down there. Because as we mentioned, with brand new NFL content coming out every single week, just trust me, you do not want to miss it. But also, I just wanted to say thank you so much to each and every one of you out there for watching. I appreciate you all more than anything. You all know this, and I will see you guys in the next video.